Hello and welcome to this session, and in this session we shall understand the next part of speech, which is the adverb. Well, up until now in this course you have understood all of these parts of speech, and in this session our focus is on the next part of speech, which is the adverb. Well, what does really an adverb mean? We have already understood as to what a verb is in our previous sessions, but what is this next part of speech which is called as the adverb? Well, let me tell you that adverb happens to be such a part of speech which basically provides additional information to fully describe the sentence. Well, if that's not clear, let me tell you that adverbs are such words in English that describe a verb. In fact, adverbs can also be used to describe an adverb. In fact, it can also be used to describe an adjective. I'm sure at this point in time none of this is clear, but then let me assure you that by the end of this session I'm sure you would have understood as to what really adverbs are and how you can use them in your English sentences. Even before I proceed and give you more clarity about the adverbs, have a look at this. This happens to be the Cambridge Dictionary definition of adverbs, that an adverb is a word that describes or gives us more information about a verb, an adjective, adverb, or a phrase. Well, I shall clarify this definition to you moving forward, but then the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines an adverb like this, that an adverb is defined as a word used to modify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, and often used to show degree, manner, place, or time. Well, I am sure that none of whatever I have told up until now is completely clear, and that is the reason as to why you have to continue watching this session and all of the videos coming up in the upcoming sessions if you'll really have to master all parts of speech. But then, as of now, my focus in this session is to give you complete clarity about the concept of adverbs. So, let me proceed and explain to you as to what really an adverb is and how this part of speech adds value to sentences when you want to use English for either oral communication or written communication. So, let me proceed. To understand the concept of adverbs, have a look at this sentence. She sings. Well, I'm sure that you can identify that she happens to be the subject of the sentence and sings happens to be the verb. But then, what really is the adverb in this sentence? Well, let me tell you that this is such a basic sentence that it does not have any adverb. But then, I can attach an adverb to this. How is it? Like this. Yes. She sings melodiously happens to be a valid English sentence, and here melodiously happens to be the adverb. Well, you know that melodiously is such a word in English which is giving us additional information about the singing ability of the singer. Well, even without an adverb, the sentence is perfectly fine. But then this word melodiously adds more information, gives us more idea about the singing capabilities of the singer, and hence here we say that melodiously happens to be an adverb because it is providing additional information about the verb. Anyway, have a look at this sentence. He runs. Again, you can notice that he happens to be the subject in this sentence and runs happens to be the verb. But then, as of now, there is no adverb in this basic sentence, and just in case, I happen to add an adverb like this. Yes, he runs quickly also is a valid English sentence, and here quickly in many ways is providing additional information as to how the runner really runs, and hence this word quickly is categorized as adverb because it is providing us with additional information about the verb. Hence quickly happens to be the adverb in this sentence. Not just that, have a look at this example. We read. Again here the subject happens to be we and read happens to be the verb. But then if I will attach an adverb to this like this, yes, we read silently. Here, silently happens to be the adverb because it is providing us with additional information as to how they read. In other words, it is additionally describing the verb that they read silently, and hence silently happens to be the adverb. Now, if you would look back at the definition of the adverb, then I am pretty sure that now you have been able to understand that adverb happens to be such words in English that additionally describes the verb. But then, not just do they additionally describe the verb, they also additionally describe the adverb itself. Well, what does that mean? Have a look at this example. She sings melodiously. Well, in this sentence, you already know that she happens to be the subject, sings happens to be the verb, and the word melodiously is giving us additional information about how she sings, and hence melodiously is categorized as the adverb. But then I can also express this sentence like this. Yes, she sings very melodiously is also a valid English sentence. But then what is this very over here? Is it a verb or is it an adverb? Well, let me tell you that very over here happens to be an adverb which is giving us additional information about how melodiously she sings. In other words, here one adverb, that is very, is giving us additional information about another adverb, that is melodiously. In other words, that is what I had told you in the definition, that adverbs happen to be such parts of speech in English that not only gives us additional information about the verb, it can also give us additional information about the adverb as well. Well, let me give you another example to clarify this. He runs quickly. Well, you know that here he happens to be the subject, runs happens to be the verb, and quickly is describing and providing us with additional information about how he runs, and hence quickly happens to be the adverb. But then have a look at this sentence. He runs incredibly quickly. Well, here incredibly definitely is a word that is adding more meaning, that is giving us more information about how quickly he runs. In other words, here incredibly happens to be an adverb which is describing us and giving us more information about how quickly he runs. In other words, here one adverb, that is incredibly, is giving us more information about another adverb which is quickly, and hence both happen to be adverbs here, wherein one adverb is giving us more information about the other adverb. Well, again, if you would look back at the definition, I am sure now you have been able to completely understand the definition that adverbs happen to be such parts of speech in English that not only give us additional information about the verb, they may also sometimes give us additional information about the adverb itself. Anyway, let me give you one final example to clarify this. We read silently. Well, you know that in this sentence, we happens to be the subject, read happens to be the verb, and silently is describing as to how we read. In other words, silently happens to be the adverb in this sentence. But then I can also write the sentence like this. We read absolutely silently. Well, this happens to be a valid English sentence, and here the word absolutely is defining and giving us more information about the other adverb silently. Obviously, here absolutely is not an adverb that is defining a verb. Rather, here absolutely is an adverb that is giving us more information about another adverb which is silently. In other words, I am sure through all of these examples, you have been able to understand that adverbs happen to be such parts of speech in English that gives us additional information about not just the verb. Sometimes in a sentence, they may also give us additional information about the adverb itself. But then not just that, adverbs sometimes gives us additional information about the adjective as well. Well, what does that mean? Let me explain it to you. Have a look at this example. She is happy. Well, in this sentence, she happens to be the subject, is happens to be the verb, and let me tell you that here happy happens to be the adjective. Well, adjectives happen to be the next part of speech that you would be learning under this video series, and whenever I am going to be taking up the concept of adjectives, it shall become completely clear. But at this point in time, what you really have to understand is that happy happens to be the adjective in this sentence. But then I can also write the sentence like this: she is very happy. Well, the word very here happens to be the adverb because it is giving us more information, it is giving us additional information about how happy the person is. In other words, here the word very is an adverb that is giving us more information about the adjective that is happy. In other words, if we go back to the definition, now you are able to understand that adverbs happen to be such parts of speech in English that give us additional information about the verb or an adverb or even an adjective. Anyway, let me give you another example. He is tired. Well, in this sentence, he happens to be the subject, is happens to be the verb, and tired happens to be the adjective in the sentence. Again, let me tell you that adjective is the next part of speech that you would be learning in this video series. But at this point in time, what I want you to understand is that he is tired is a valid English sentence. But then this sentence is not indicating to us as to how tired he is. Well, what I mean to say is, have a look at this sentence. He is extremely tired. Well, here the word extremely is giving us additional information about the adjective. In fact, this word extremely is telling us that the person is very tired, and hence here extremely is the adverb which is giving us additional information about the adjective tired. Well, that way, let me give you one final example. You are smart. Well, in this sentence, you happens to be the subject, or happens to be the verb, and smart happens to be the adjective. But then the same sentence can also be expressed like this: you are absolutely smart is something which is a valid English sentence, and here the word absolutely happens to be an adverb which is giving us additional information about the smartness of the person. All said and done, now if we have to look back at the dictionary definition of adverbs, well, the Cambridge Dictionary defined it as a word that describes or gives us more information about a verb, adjective, adverb, or a phrase. And that way, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defined an adverb as a word used to modify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, and is often used to show the degree, manner, place, and time. Well, I'm sure that you have now been somewhat able to understand the definition of adverb, but let me tell you that this being the first session on adverbs, that we have just touched the surface level of the concept of adverbs. There are many different types of adverbs about which you would be learning in the upcoming sessions, and if you will ask me as to what really are the different types of adverbs, well, these happen to be the different types of adverbs. Well, if you really have to understand all of these 5 different types of adverbs and then start using adverbs in your day-to-day English communication very effectively, then all that you need to do is to attend my next session. This session, being an introductory session on adverbs, has given you an idea about what really adverb as a part of speech is, but then you shall get that complete clarity when you will understand all the 5 different types of adverbs. And let me tell you that in my next session, you shall be able to completely understand all of these 5 different types of adverbs. Hope this session was informative and hope to see you in the next session. Thanks for watching. Let's meet again in my next session.